guys, it's Reflection here, Tank12, having a call me. I don't really care. Welcome back to World Tanks, where we're today taking a quick look at the AMX 30 prototype. This is a French tier 9 medium tank that Wargaming did take out of the tech tree a couple of years ago, and I still do not understand why they did it, because I think the tank still kind of fits into World Tanks, and it's not like it's completely underpowered, as you will see in the replays in a short moment. Now, you can still get your hands on this vehicle, I think, if you've unlocked it prior. It should be in the Vehicle Collectors tab right here, exactly down in here with some other vehicles like low tier tanks, and it also should feature the AMX 30B. Both of these tanks, very legendary, I think, like very well produced vehicles and also successful tanks for the French. They did export a ton of them, and also a vehicle I like to play a lot. Now, I did get back to this tank because somebody in the comment section below did say that they preferred this one over the M46 Patton. And to be fair, I wanted to try it out again and see if I liked either one of them better. And I have to be honest, I don't really have a preference between the two of them, because I would also pull in the Leopard Prototype A into the mix, because they all play very similar to one another. So where are the differences? What does the AMX 30 do better than the M46 Patton? Like, is it a fun tank? Is it still usable? And where are the strengths and the weaknesses of this vehicle? But before we do that, I'm going to tell you guys real fast what we're going to be doing as well in the near future. I'm currently trying to free mark a tier 8 legendary premium heavy tank, the KV5. It's not been very successful as of lately. Some very mixed battles, some very mixed results. Very difficult, because this tank just doesn't have the pen. The armor is kind of good, but not always, and most of the time that means it's not very good. But it's still a lot of fun, and I'm trying to see what is the best loadout for the KV5. But yeah, we're doing that right now, and I also want to make some new videos in the near future of other games. Like, I have Company of Heroes 3 in mind, where I want to go over to strategy a little bit, so we have a bit of more diversification in this channel, not just World Tanks, not just War Thunder, other games as well. Because, as you know, in about a year's time, 288 days, I'm going to be stopping World of Tanks uploads for good. So yeah, in that time, I want to upload as many World of Tanks videos as I can and kind of create the content that I want to create, right? Just have some fun in the game. So the AMX 30. This is the prototype version, so it's not the exact same as the tier 10, but it does have the exact same gun. There are several things I want to show you guys real quick. Yeah, this is the fully upgraded version. We're not talking about the stock variant, but the fully upgraded version has a very nice gun. It's the 105 F1 gun, which has horrible dispersion, to be fair, 0.37 in comparison to the M46. If we take a quick look at the 105mm gun right there, as you can see, oh, it also has horrible dispersion. I never said anything. How did I get the dispersion down? Okay, I did get the dispersion down by probably equipment and crew. But yeah, dispersion values, you can still get that down, so you can work with that. But it has great pen, 248mm of penetration with APCR rounds, 300 with heat. That's something the M46 Patton doesn't have. And it has really good DPM as well. So this is a great gun that will allow you to do a lot of damage if you manage to hit your targets. And most of the time you're going to be able to hit them, because, to be fair, your aim time, dispersion, once you do get some of the things on the vehicle, loadout, equipment, consumables, a good crew, it does turn into a very competent fighting vehicle. So what's so special about this thing? It has great DPM, as you can see right here. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, so it's not as good as the M46 Patton with its 10 degrees, but it has a very high rate of fire. It has decent enough pen, like that's 30mm more penetration than you have on the M46 Patton, so you have to dip less into the premium rounds, because 30mm can make quite a difference at tier 9 and 10. And yeah, the alpha damage is pretty good. So this is a great gun, very reliable most of the time, and it also has some armor. It does have a very big cupola on top of the turret, but I do have the feeling that when you're on the move, when you're a bit further back, it's quite difficult to hit that. And the turret has a shape that does actually benefit you. I've bounced a lot of shells on this very large like gun mantle here because it's like extremely large, and also on the cheeks. Now if they are firing heat, they are going to go right through it, so don't bother too much. But it is much better protected than the Leopard Prototype A. Now, if you go to the hull armor on the other hand, and also the side armor of the turret and the rear, it's not very well protected. We don't even have to talk about that. It's only 30 millimeters thick, so high explosive will come raining down, and if you get hit by artillery on the side, you're gonna have a very, very bad day. Mobility is pretty much where this tank trumps the M46 by miles. 65 kph without turbo, like the specific power to weight ratio at 21.82 horsepower per ton, so very rapid, accelerates very quickly as well. You don't need a turbo to be effective. And the only thing that is a bit of a downside is the traverse speed, which only goes to 47.35, even with the improved rotation mechanism right here. But either way, very mobile tank, just like the Leopard Prototype A. They're almost identical in that regard, and that makes it a very, very valuable tank, especially if you have a map to maneuver on. Now, the M46 Patton does not have that kind of freedom. It does have the specific power to weight ratio if you are using the turbocharger class 1, but it also has bad traverse speed for a medium tank, and the top speed is just not really it. 53 kph with a turbo is just very sad. So yeah, that's just one of the things. If you want to have a vehicle that is mobile at tier 9, you probably would not go for the M46 Patton. You'd much rather go for the AMX 30. These bloody flies. Okay, so yeah, mobility is a really big strength of this tank. So let's talk about the equipment that I'm using real fast, and then we're going to jump into some gameplay because I don't want to keep you guys waiting for too long. I went with improved rotation mechanism because this tank does have okay dispersions when turning the turret or the tank. But the issue is, it just doesn't feel as snappy if you don't have a vertical stabilizer. But I think a vertical stabilizer would be a kind of waste. If I use the improved rotation mechanism, I'll get a better turret rotation speed, I get better hull traverse speed, and I also do get like less dispersion when turning the tank or the turret, and that already in of itself, in the mobility tab, is going to give me a very nice boost, and I'm going to go for that. Now, second, because I'm trying to get the field modifications, I went with low noise exhaust system. You could also go with commander's vision system. I don't really think you need coated optics, because coated optics, I mean, your view range is at 441, base would be 390. I think that's more than enough for a vehicle like this. But if you want to have more than that, you can always go with coated optics. I think commander's vision system would help me on the maps where I really need to have some vision. I need to spot, for example, where there are no light tanks, and where I can take over the role because I have the mobility for it. That's why I went with the low noise exhaust system, to give me some more concealment, because I think I'm happy with the view range right here. But, maybe there is the argument to be made that you take away the gun rammer class 2, which gives you an additional, 10% more DPM. That's like 300 damage per minute more. But since I'm already at over 3,000, wouldn't matter too much to me. I could live without it and then just add commander's vision system to it, and then you're going to be a really good scout. Like, you're going to be a very effective medium tank with decent view range. So maybe there is the argument to be made to have two setups. One for, those city fights, those really close quarter fights where you go immediately completely for DPM. You also take out low noise exhaust system, and you add on improved ventilations. And the other option, when you're on an open spaced map where you need to have a line of sight, and you go for a full-on scouting setup. But to be fair, this is the setup I'm using right now, and I'm quite happy with it because I just don't have the resources to go with two setups, right, for every single tank. I have too many tanks. I cannot go two setups for every single tank, so it's not worth it for me. Either way, let's jump on over to the gameplay before I bore you guys to death, and then we'll see what this tank is capable of. Okay guys, you know the deal. Two gameplays right up here for you. We are playing the AMX 30 prototype, and we are on the map Berlin. You can see very favorable conditions for us. Only tier 8 vehicles, some tier 9s, and just the odd 3 tier 10 tanks.
Now, to be fair, if I was in a tier 10 vehicle, I wouldn't really like to be playing on this map with this kind of setup because I would much rather have more HP to go up against than, all of these tier 8 vehicles. But to be fair, in the end, I'd probably die as the first tank when I would be playing my tier 10, so it doesn't really matter in that sense. Yeah, we're playing Berlin. The middle is very important. We're going right for the bunker. We do have the mobility to get in here, and we also have, the sights we can actually spot for ourselves. But we have to be really cautious because if you play the middle, you have to know that there are a lot of different ways that enemies can shoot you. And as you can see right there, we already have one issue. We have a E100 and a Defender in the north, in that little town part of the map. We have a Schaufutur close to us, a T49, and then probably some TD sitting at the back on the 7 and 8 line. But yeah, if you look closely at the minimap, if I can get your attention to that minimap, you can see that there are already a couple of problems that we can immediately see just by the positioning of our team and the enemy team. As you can see, the enemy team is rushing the north with 4 heavy tanks, while we only have an IS-3 and an Object 705A over there. So that means the north is really, really undergunned, and that is something we have to keep in mind, because as long as the north holds, we can play the middle, but if we lose the north, we're going to lose the middle position as well. Or basically we're just going to get smacked in the face in the middle by a SU-130PM. Have I mentioned that the armor on this tank is not that great? Well, there you have it. The armor on this thing is not the best. The turret armor is decent enough to bounce a couple of AP rounds, especially if you're far away, but most of the time you're not going to be able to bounce a lot of the shells. Now, that makes it just that much more entertaining to play, because it's very, very challenging to do well in this tank if you are not in a favorable position. So you have to have a little bit of patience and you have to have some good fortune. As you can see, I have neither of that in that situation right there, because I fire and I hit the ground and it was a terrible shot either way. Should have never even taken a pop at that Centurion Action 10. But as you can see, the North is actually doing a pretty fabulous job so far. Oh, just as I say that, Object 705A dies. But as you can see, look at the tanks that are rolling in through the North now. There is a Hori, a Jagdpanzer E100, a E100, a T95, a 50 TP, a Defender. Like, all of these vehicles are pushing the North, and we finally get a little bit of luck with the E100 there. We set him on fire with an APCR round right into the engine deck, and he loses a whopping 1,300 or 1,400 HP to us. But that means we have to give up the middle. We have to get out of here, and as you can see, it's not looking very good. But you can always take a bit of damage before you run away, right? Thankfully, this tank is fast, and I get very lucky here that nobody really shoots me. I try to put like as much cover as possible in between me and the SU-130PM, but the SU-130PM has probably moved because the majority of my team is now pushing the J&K line. So this is where it gets really interesting, because this tank is pretty damn good once you have it in a very nice position. And we're going to show you guys a very nice spot on Berlin that you can utilize to spot for your team and to double bush in. Now, if you don't know what double bushing is basically where you just have 2 bushes in front of you, and you let the first one be transparent, you peek, you watch, you spot the tanks, then you fall back, and you let both of the bushes go like back into a solid form, and then you can fire because they cannot detect you. Now, keep in mind, the AMX 30 prototype is a bit weird in the term that the APCR rounds, they have 248 millimeters of penetration, which is great. I don't really need to fire heat on the Defender. But the heat rounds, well, they have 300 millimeters, and that means you really have to hit the weak spots on the T95. Now, that T95 is going to be a bit of a problem for me, but thankfully, as you can see here, we have set up a very, very nice little defensive cocoon with our team here. We have a couple of TDs in the back. We did get spotted by the 50 TPR because I think the bush right there was transparent when I fired. But as you can see, don't fire in this position. They are all looking for me because they know I'm the eyes. I'm just going to be a really annoying little bugger in these bushes. And now, sadly for me, I have tanks that I can't really pen. I can't pen the T95 from the front. Well, at least reliably. I can pen the Yak Panzer E100 from the front reliably with 300 millimeters of heat pen, and I can pen the Hori if that thing is hauled down. So what I'm trying to do right now is just be a really annoying little nuisance for this T95, keep him tracked, and there's also the ability to actually pen the T95 through the tracks if you have the right angle, but that only really works if you have the right angle. So right here, right now, we have the right angle, but as you can see, it immediately shifts because he turns his tank, and now we cannot shoot into his superstructure anymore, and now it's kind of awkward. But we can keep him tracked, you know? We can keep him tracked, and we can just keep him in that position. But that was a very badly aimed shot. As you can see, this defensive position allowed us now to hold off this advance. Our team is still making a push in the enemy's cap. You can see the Chieftain prototype just knocked out the artillery. We still have a Object 704 doing his rounds, you know, pushing the Moistion and the E100. But at the same time, for me now, it's all about knocking this T95 out because he is like the final piece that can still spot me right here, and I just want to have him gone so that we can, you know, make a play on the Yak Panzer E100 and the Hori, because the Yak Panzer is still like almost full HP. Now I'm just trying to go through the T95 with heat. Now, the tank does carry enough ammunition. I do carry a bit too many high explosive rounds for my own personal taste, but this is an old tank. This is an old school setup that I have. Only 10 heat rounds. That used to be more than enough. But in World of Tanks in the year 2023, I think you kind of have to go down the rabbit hole and take more premium rounds, because I wouldn't have gotten very far with my standard rounds with the T95, the Yak Panzer 100, and the Hori. So right there, as you can see, Hori gets spotted by our new German tank, the Kampfpanzer 03 PR07 HK. Oh my god, what a terrible name. And we're just going to be pushing in on the Yak Panzer E100 with the TS5. I think this is now the perfect time to either push the Yak Panzer E100 or help the Object 704 because he's all by himself and knock out the Moistion. The issue is just that the Object 704 is so far in the enemy position that he got knocked out, and now I know, yeah, it would be pretty stupid to go and try to fight a Moistion by myself with only 2 heat rounds. I do make a bit of a mistake here. This TS5 is, you know, he's trying to get in the face of this Yak Panzer E100, and this E100 is doing a pretty good job in luring me in and getting me shot by the Hori. Now that Hori AP round did definitely hurt me because he hit me for a whopping 462, but still we managed to knock out the Yak Panzer 100, getting us to 4,657 damage and 1,850 damage assisted. So now it's all about chasing down the E100, getting the SU-130PM, and if you look closely, you can see we still have a couple of tanks that are really healthy. The Object 140, the Kampfpanzer 03, Kampfpanzer 3, and the Object 268. Now, what is really nice about the AMX 30 is its mobility. I'm always going to be able to get to a place, even in the later game, in time. And yeah, basically the rate of fire is going to allow you to really put a lot of shells into players if they don't have a lot of armor. I've noticed that the pen, even though you have 248 millimeters of penetration instead of the 218 millimeters on the M46 pattern, I somehow have the feeling that both of the guns almost perform the same way. Maybe the shell velocity is just a bit better on the AMX 30 prototype, but I still feel that the M46 pattern is on a similar kind of playing field, even though the stats show something completely different. If you look at the characteristics on both the vehicles, they're very, very different, and it's kind of fascinating to see that Wargaming deemed the AMX 30 prototype or the AMX 30 line to be obsolete, while it is on paper much better than the M46 pattern in terms of mobility and penetration and ammunition types. So what the hell is the M46 pattern in that case? You know, if this thing is obsolete, what the hell is going on with the M46 pattern? Either way, we're going to jump on to the final game where I can show you the strengths and the weaknesses of the vehicle again. But I think you kind of get the gist of it. It's a really cool tank. It's kind of a hybrid between a Leopard Prototype A and, I'm not even sure what kind of other hybrid would it be. Well, maybe an American tank and, a German tank, because it has somewhat the rate of fire of the American tank, but it also at the same time has the mobility of the German tank with the Leopard, and it has a little bit of the protection of the American tank that the Leopard prototype doesn't have, but at the same time it doesn't really do the things that the Leopard prototype does really well. That being like incredible accuracy, really great pen. That it doesn't do, but it's still better than the M46 pattern. But it's difficult. I love the pattern, so I'm really biased. Let's move on to the other gameplay, and then we can see what this tank is really all about. You guys know the deal. This time around, we are in a tier 10 matchup. No tier 8s inside. Just our good old AMX 30 going up against two T57s, two Object 430, use that American weird Yo tank, and a couple of tier 9s. But to be fair, I don't really perform the best in this game, at least in the sense of making smart plays. I'm really aggressive, and I think the aggression in this replay shows you just how lucky I am from time to time, because I ride my luck a lot when I play my tanks. I'm really aggressive. I like to take the risk. I like to, be in the midst of the fighting, even though sometimes these tanks are actually not made for that purpose. I don't think the AMX 30 or the 30B are meant to be like these close range fighters, but they do perform particularly well because of their high rate of fire and their very reliable gun, at least as support vehicles. I think they are really doing a great job when you have like a little bit of cover in front of you, other tanks as well, so you're not the only target that they shoot, and you can actually put quite a bit of pressure on these guys. As you can see right there, very scary tier 9 German medium tank, but a Foch right next to him, also very scary if you don't have any armor. If you do have armor, I don't really think that the Foch is all too scary. I think other tier 9 tank destroyers are more scary than the Foch, but if you don't have any armor, well, that's pretty scary at all. Very lucky there that the TNH Traxxas doesn't do any damage, because that bloody artillery really wanted our number. Keep in mind this thing has like 30 millimeters of side armor, 30 millimeters of turret armor at the back, so if you do get hit by artillery, chances are fairly high that they might pen you. Very bad play by me right here. I actually move on over to the Leopard Prototype A because I wanted to fall back. Turns out the Foch and the Kampf Panzer 50T both didn't really care all that much and stayed in that position, and they, well, at least the Foch whipped me once. But what is really funny about the map here, Ensk, is that you can actually shoot underneath these tracks, underneath these train carriages. And what is really cool is that the TNH actually doesn't have like an angled hull, so it's pretty straightforward, just go straight down, and the tracks are actually aligned with the hull, so you can shoot through there, which usually doesn't do anything with other tanks, because the other tanks, especially Soviet ones, have like some angles to them, or the hull kind of stops before the tracks go down there, so you can't really do any damage. But with the TNH, we were able to do some damage. And we get a little bit of sweet revenge for the Foch, because he hit us once more while we were running away. And now we're at a very dangerous low HP, only 348 HP remaining, and we still have a couple of tanks. But it looks like by this point that our team already has cleaned up the city pretty well. We've cleaned up the field. The enemy team has been a bit too aggressive, not conservative enough. But look at that shot, 469 damage to an Object 430. Don't you love to see that straight into the engine deck? A fire would have been great as well. But yeah, when you're playing this thing, you have longer games and you have the ability to actually flank tanks. You are going to be doing a lot of damage. Sadly for us, obviously, the the overpowered German KPZ-50T is not going to get tracked, and the damage bias is just going to get double tracked and 0 damage. But yeah, having the ability to do a lot of damage, having a high DPM and also a reliable gun is something that you cannot take for granted, and it's just very, very fun to play. I think it's a incredibly fun tank, the AMX 30 prototype. I also enjoyed the 30B. I still play it occasionally every once in a while, but to be fair, like the 30 prototype, I left it alone for a while, and you know, so far the 3 marking process is actually not too difficult. I think you have all of the tools available for you. It seems like not a lot of players are playing the AMX 30 prototype right now. Maybe because they weren't able to get the tank when it was still in the game, and they don't have any access to it via the collectors tab. But I think it's a pretty fun tank. Would I say it's a better tank than the M46 Patton on paper? Yes, 100%. It's a better tank than the M46 Patton on paper. But is it a more fun tank than the M46 Patton? Well, for me personally, I have to say I'm biased. I would have to say no. I still enjoy the M46 Patton because it's just such an annoying little tank that does like constant damage, has such a high rate of fire. Even though the rate of fire on this thing is actually just as good, if not a bit better than on the M46 Patton. The M46 Patton has a little bit of turret armor that you can actually use more effectively on the ridgelines, and having 10 degrees of gun depression is actually a lot more, I would say it's a lot nicer than the 8 degrees that I kind of have outgrown. I really want to have a lot of gun depression because of all of the nooks and crannies and the hills in World of Tanks. But either way, you can't really go wrong with playing either one of them. You just have to have patience with both of them. You're going to get absolutely annihilated, absolutely dunked on in certain games. If you run into a BZ-176, I can tell you guys that it's going to be a really painful day for you. But other than that, you know, if you play to the medium tank doctrine, you stay inside of the bushes, you flank, you keep with other groups, you snipe sometimes, you make daring plays, you can actually have a lot of fun. You can really be an important part of the battle. Because in the end, this tank is fast enough to be anywhere it needs to be, especially since games don't last as long as they used to anymore. 5 minutes is already a long game now. And, you know, you need to be there. If you want to free mark anything, you need to be there where you can do the damage. Because in the end, if you can't do the damage, you're not going to get the free mark. That's basically just the way it is. But if you don't want to free mark it, just want to have fun, this is a fun tank. Give it a try if you have access to it. And if you don't have access to it, well, you're not really missing out. You can play the Leopard Prototype A. And that does a lot of the things similarly well, but it doesn't have the added little bit of protection that this thing has. Either way, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, have a good one, and yeah, see you.